No. And if they do, it's the game industry's fault. Let me explain. This has become a more and more common question or sentiment. The idea that players themselves are the ones who have way too high expectations, or the ones that are making way too many demands. Which, there are in fact cases where that is true, people do expect the world from things, everything, but you have to also question, where does this come from? And it's not just the players coming up with this themselves. The game industry itself constantly has the process of making people think big, bigger, most powerful console in the world, more powerful console, etc. So when they don't meet the expectations they themselves have set for years, somehow it's the player's fault for it? I do agree. There are many instances where people just expect too much, but the companies themselves are the ones making the expectations, or in some cases, they try to lower expectations, but too late. Even not just game developers, even major people who run like freaking game conferences like Jeff Keighley could be at times where he wants you to think big, think grander, but then once got people thinking too grand, try to dial back expectations, and that was just for a freaking presentation show. I believe it was the game Baldur's Gate 3 that took the world by storm, won a laughable amount of awards, and did very good for developers. Good on them. And then there were other companies who were basically trying to temper people by saying they shouldn't expect the same or similar level of quality or expectations for their projects. And while it is good that they're trying to set expectations, at the same time, people didn't take it as that. They felt as the idea that people having this game that they were wowed by, possessed by, and that they shouldn't expect the same kind of, whoa, this is amazing kind of feeling for other games, so people took it as a wholly negative thing that developers were trying to do. I already made a video on my gripes with freaking PC gaming and console gaming, but like I said, the whole entire thing where people brag about more power, better technology, better this and that, and then what do you get? Them not being able to do certain things that either they used to be able to do, or they just don't do anymore. At the recent release, Metal Gear 3 Remake is a case where it was a game that's like, hey, you want performance or quality? It's like, shouldn't this powerful console be able to do both?
I'm the one person left who doesn't care about frames.
Yep.
I care about it being locked at 60.
Oh, let's do it. Hang on. Let's check the frames real quick.
Oh,
I love doing this. Let's see how much you don't care.
Yeah, quality. Oof.
God. Oh man.
I am the person that says it should be, every game should be running at 60.
Oh, like, that's better.
And it also has problems on the PlayStation 5 Pro, which people paid more money because they're more enthusiasts and wanted higher fidelity and they should get both. I mean, ideally the PS5 themselves should do both. The advertisers should do both. It doesn't. But even the PS5 Pro version of that game had issues. And while that one is game specific, not all the games are like that, it is one of those things where, once again, you brag about the power of these consoles, you brag about the power of everything, you brag about how big your game will be, and then you drop the ball. I know someone out there is sick of me of bringing up Final Fantasy 16, but I won't stop because Square Enix is a big example of pursuing graphics over everything, and while some people do enjoy that, enjoy the graphical fidelity of their games, but when their games then struggle to have frame rate issues like Final Fantasy 15, I believe when it came on PS4, it was like 30 FPS or so it was more stable kind of thing. But then when it came out on PS4 Pro, that game started hovering between the 40s and 50s for frame rate, and you should either have a log 30 or a log 60. In between is just gonna be jarring AF. But even like Final Fantasy 16, where like, hey, here's the performance mode for better frame rate, and it still can't even hold on to the frame rate at all. That's why some people advocated just put on quality mode because, oh, the game can't hold a frame rate, why not just go with the one that lowers the frame rate? It's like, the frame's gonna be a lower. We're gonna drop that thing even lower. Then you have the big advent of open world games where it's like, your creativity is all that matters. Think big, bigger, because this game will be huge, but obviously developers can't truly live up to their crazy potential. So you either get open world games that are enjoyable, good, some that have to reuse content all over the place or to fill out the world, or some games that just don't have much in the world period because, well, the idea of open world was more enjoyable to them than probably figuring out how to actually fill it out to a point you would probably enjoy a more streamlined experience at that point rather than something that's big and now empty. Despite the think big, open world games in the future, baby, think huge. Another genre gets big thing about think big is freaking live service games or games as a service, where the whole idea is you want to play one game forever. No, it's a horrible prospect. Why would you even say that? Get out of here. But it's the big idea of, hey, here's a game that will constantly update over and over. You can keep playing it for years and have new stuff while you give us more and more money for that new stuff. Isn't that a great trade-off? And while there are some games that can do it successfully, especially something like Marvel Rivals nowadays, that, from what I've seen, people greatly enjoy it. People greatly enjoy it when Overwatch is able to do it. But nowadays, it's just one of those risk versus reward systems that is way more than the risk for companies because so many games keep trying to do it or have to make way for it and failing. Even games that aren't even a big multiplayer competitive game and are just a co-op game, just like Suicide Squad, Killer Justice League, and being like, hey, the publisher says make it a live service, but rather than thinking big, the companies are like, we don't want to actually spend the money on thinking big, so try and think smaller. The publisher wanted to think big in terms of the revenue, but then told developers to think smaller in terms of the actual scope of the project, making it nowhere near as grand as a live service really should be. And even then, from what I've seen, correct me if I'm wrong, please correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of live service games tend to just be, hey, we added a new character, give us money. And it's like, man, back in my day, we just called that freaking having DLC. Now it's live service, add a new character. And the other downsides are, hey, here are skins you can buy. Hey, here's this and that. You can now just get in the game. Give us more money. Okay, does it make the game more interesting? No. Not at all, really. Even games that used to do the live service model greatly, like Dead by Daylight, nowadays just now meander where either the game's too buggy or a case of, hey, remember we used to get maps in that game? I remember. They promised a new map for the first time in years. Next year. And it's like, live service games, your imagination. This is the peak of our imagination. Back to a Final Fantasy example, Final Fantasy VII Remake project, and how let's take this one game that had these beautiful graphics for its time, or HD for its time. You have this not great but fun enough gameplay. All these mini games that I personally don't like, but other people do enjoy the game for it. All this stuff, this big world, being able to have an airship first in a 3D environment for the first time, some of the transportation, truck breeding, all of this stuff in the game for this one game that was on 3 discs. Whole. And then nowadays, Remake project is, hey, let's take this one game, split it into 3 games, and each of these games essentially has less content than the original game did, and also has less things you can even do in the world than that game did, but clap, because now it's prettier, and it's an action RPG instead of turn-based. And for many people, they do enjoy that. They are happy with that. This is one of those things for Final Fantasy, you compare it to an older title, it's like, oh, remember when you used to be able to do stuff like this back on the goddamn NES and Famicom? And nowadays, stuff like that is kind of more of an exception because developers don't want, well, publishers don't want to spend the money on that. But hey, think big for his remake project that feels somehow smaller in scope, but at the same time feels too big for its own bridges. Another reason I don't want to solely blame the player for big expectations is also trailers and marketing everything. They try to make the game as appealing as possible, even sometimes not necessarily misleading, but not showing the most correct light. I remember people complain about the commercial Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, how it made it look more like an action game than a fighting game kind of thing, because it only showed the cutscenes, which, yeah, was more unintentional. Or just stuff where it's like, hey, here are all these trailers, but there's content not in the game. Final 15 is a big example of that. We're enough about Best of Final Fantasy, let's go with the big one. Let's call it Marines, where the entire trailer was just lies. It was lies. And like, do you blame the player for falling for lies? Or do you blame the company trying to advertise it as this big grandiose game, and the actual reality was it was nothing like that? I don't want to blame the player for that one, because how could they know? The company should be able to be honest and actually make a good game. But it's one of those things that the company set the expectations. They made the trailer, they made the presentations, everything. They don't want to temper expectations that people are thinking too big. In a day where you can see what fans are saying at all times, you have the ability to temper or deconfirm things. Silent Hill F is constantly being called a Souls-like by people, and developers came out and said, it's not a Souls-like, it's an action horror game. Please don't call it Souls-like. They want people having a bad expectation, because like a Souls-like, there's some people who will maybe not play it because they don't want a Souls-like from a horror game, or people who will go, oh man, it's gonna be like Souls, it's gonna be so awesome. It's like, that's not what it is, kind of thing. That's why I mentioned also when it came to Mcgee's Alice Madness Returns, how the big CG trailers the game got announced with didn't properly highlight what the game was even like, and those trailers were expensive to make, but they didn't really consult the devs on it. It's one of those things where it's like the publisher sets the expectation of what their game is being. They're the ones to get you excited to buy the thing, and so it doesn't meet the expectations. Once again, is that fully the player? It's partially the player, because there are some people who do deliberately not look for advertising in the slightest at all, and just go based off their gut, or go, I've seen it enough, I assume I'll like it. There are people who play demos of games, instead have people tell them about the demo for some reason, kind of thing. So there are some people who want to go in not knowing much, which technically you can blame it on them, or a lot of times companies just trying to hype you up, kill up to the hype they created, and then we create a problem. Or people who play another game, like the big hotness right now is Clair Obscure Expedition 33, which, yeah, it's a great game. Now our developers have to try and live up to it, and there are some developers who can do that and everything, other developers who can't, and developers who should be able to, considering they have way more experts in their whole entire company and way more resources. But it's one of those things where like, hey, here's a game that blew them away, and I don't expect all games to be like that. Should they expect every game to be like that? No, but another game is up front with you how it looks, then it's unfair to really treat it like that. They can tell people, like to say, it's unfair to look at any game and go, yes, but isn't Grand Theft Auto? It's like, yeah, Grand Theft Auto is a very popular series, but not every game is trying to be like Grand Theft Auto at all, or even has the scope of Grand Theft Auto. So that one's a case of a player having an unfair expectation. So that one's like a big thing where, okay, the player's at fault there because the company didn't even do anything. Now there are some people who don't have big expectations, but they go very far in the opposite direction, to the point where they tell people that they should be grateful that a game even exists, or grateful about certain aspects of a game even if they don't like it. That's also not helping, because these are games that you're paying a lot of money for. You buy that launch, potentially 70 to 80 bucks nowadays, but it's a product that you're also paying money for. So trying to say you should be grateful is also ridiculous, and I do not like when people try to treat it as that. Like, don't even. Y'all don't do that for, I swear y'all don't even do that for other mediums. One of those things where, yes, people are at times being overly harsh on developers, sometimes very unfairly, but do not try and tell people that they should be grateful for such and such when it is still a game the developers made, the publisher also made, that they probably sold for top dollar, especially if it also includes stuff like DLC, or it's a goddamn live service game. Oh dear lordy, you should never tell someone to be grateful for a freaking live service game. Don't even have the balls to do it. That's just what I want to rant about, the whole entire aspect of people saying it's not developers or the industry's fault, it's the players for having too high expectations. The industry made expectations. The developers and publishers set the expectations. These are things they are setting when they advertise the game, how they advertise the console, how they advertise themselves, and everything. I hope to at some point make a video on the console wars, since console warring itself is also created by the game industry, and it's also a monster that they also can't stop, and it's like, congrats, you created this beast, you are stuck with it, what did you expect? So that's what I want to ramble about. Go out there, play games, maybe you'll find something that's high, that was way better than you expected, maybe a bit lower but you still enjoy it. Who knows at this point? Who even knows? Who even knows anymore?